You've stumbled onto something extraordinary. That restless feeling that brought you here. It's your consciousness, recognizing a truth that's been hiding in plain sight for decades. Our most rigorously tested science, quantum mechanics, has accidentally rediscovered what ancient mystics called the monad. The unified field that physicists measure exhibits three impossible properties. It's omnipresent throughout space, it responds to conscious observation, and it contains infinite creative potential. Sound familiar? These are identical to how Thoth described divine consciousness thousands of years ago. The scientific establishment has been measuring the fundamental nature of reality without realizing they're documenting what mystics have always known. That peculiar sensation you're experiencing right now isn't intellectual excitement. It's awareness recognizing itself in the mirror of validated science. This convergence dissolves the artificial boundary between spiritual wisdom and quantum mechanics. Both domains have been pointing to identical truth using different vocabularies. What opens up when we finally connect these pieces transforms everything we thought we knew about consciousness, reality, and our place within the cosmic order. The implications will reshape how you see existence itself. The moment that changed everything happened in 1909, in a basement laboratory at the University of Munich. Thomas Young was running what seemed like a simple experiment, shooting light through two parallel slits onto a screen behind them. What he discovered would eventually shatter every assumption about the nature of reality itself. When Young fired photons through both slits simultaneously, something impossible happened. Instead of creating two bright lines on the screen, which any rational person would expect, the light created an interference pattern. Waves of light and darkness, exactly like what you'd see if you dropped two stones into a still pond and watched the ripples interact. Here's where it gets strange. Light was behaving like a wave, spreading through both slits at once, interfering with itself. But when Young decided to place a detector at one of the slits to see which path each photon actually took, the wave pattern vanished instantly. The moment conscious observation entered the picture, the photons started behaving like particles again, going through one slit or the other, never both. The implications hit the scientific community like a thunderbolt. The act of observation, conscious awareness itself, was literally changing physical reality at the most fundamental level. This wasn't a measurement error or faulty equipment. This was consciousness demonstrating creative power over matter. What Young had stumbled upon was the observer effect, and it revealed something that mystics had been saying for millennia. Consciousness doesn't just perceive reality, it participates in creating it. The Hermetic texts spoke of the mind's power to shape the material world. Hindu philosophy described reality as consciousness dreaming itself into existence. And here was quantum mechanics proving them right with mathematical precision. But the rabbit hole goes much deeper. Quantum mechanics revealed that before observation, particles exist in what physicists call superposition, a state where all possible outcomes exist simultaneously. An electron doesn't have a definite position or momentum. It exists as a cloud of probabilities, a wave function containing every possible state it could be in. Think about that for a moment. At the quantum level, reality isn't made of solid, definite things. It's made of infinite potential waiting to be actualized. And what actualizes it? The collapse of the wave function through conscious observation. Every time you look at something, you're literally selecting one reality from an infinite field of possibilities. This is exactly what spiritual traditions have always called the creative power of divine consciousness. The Kabbalah describes Ein Sof, the infinite potential from which all manifestation emerges. Buddhism speaks of the void that contains all possibilities, and quantum mechanics has now measured this infinite potential field directly. Werner Heisenberg, one of quantum theory's founders, put it perfectly. What we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning. We're not passive observers of a pre-existing reality. We're active participants in an ongoing act of cosmic creation. The evidence keeps mounting. Quantum entanglement, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, shows that particles can become correlated in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of the distance between them. Change the spin of an electron in New York, and its entangled partner in Tokyo responds instantaneously, not at light speed, Instantaneously. This isn't science fiction. It's been verified in laboratories thousands of times, and it proves what mystics have always known: everything in the universe is interconnected at the deepest level. There's no separation, no isolated objects floating in empty space. Just one unified field of consciousness expressing itself as apparent multiplicity. Modern physicists are now talking about this unified field in terms that sound remarkably similar to ancient descriptions of divine consciousness. It's infinite in its potential. It responds to consciousness. It's omnipresent, existing everywhere simultaneously. It's timeless, operating outside our normal experience of linear time. And it's creative, continuously bringing new realities into manifestation. John Wheeler, the physicist who coined the term black hole, proposed that we live in a participatory universe, where consciousness and cosmos are engaged in a continuous dance of mutual creation. He called it from bit, the idea that physical reality emerges from information, from the questions consciousness asks of the quantum field. This convergence isn't coincidental. When you study the properties quantum mechanics has discovered about the unified field, they match traditional descriptions of the monad with startling precision. The field of infinite potential that mystics called the source of all existence, quantum mechanics calls it the quantum vacuum, a field of infinite zero-point energy from which all particles emerge. The divine consciousness that responds to prayer and intention. Quantum mechanics shows us a field that literally responds to conscious observation by collapsing possibilities into actualities. Consider what happens during deep meditation or mystical experiences. People report feeling connected to everything, experiencing themselves as part of an infinite, conscious field. Neuroscientists studying these states find that the brain's default mode network, the part that maintains our sense of separate self, goes quiet. And in that silence, people directly experience what quantum mechanics has been measuring all along: the unified field of consciousness that underlies apparent reality. The implications are staggering. Prayer isn't wishful thinking, it's consciousness communicating with the quantum field that responds to conscious intention. Synchronicities aren't coincidences, they're evidence of the non-local connections quantum entanglement predicts. Intuitive knowing isn't imagination, it's direct access to the information field that connects everything. We're not dealing with metaphors here. The unified field that quantum mechanics has discovered and the divine consciousness that spiritual traditions describe aren't similar concepts, they're the same phenomenon, approached through different methodologies. Science and spirituality haven't been studying different realities. They've been studying the same reality from different angles. This recognition changes everything. Those mystical teachings you might have dismissed as beautiful poetry, they're actually precise operating manuals for quantum reality. The ancient wisdom that seemed too good to be true, it's been validated by our most rigorous science. The monad that Thoth described isn't a spiritual metaphor, it's the quantum field itself. And understanding this convergence is the key to unlocking capabilities you never imagined possible. That moment when you felt completely connected to everything around you, when the boundaries of your individual self seemed to dissolve into something infinitely larger, wasn't a hallucination. You were directly perceiving quantum entanglement in action. What mystics have called unity consciousness is actually your awareness, tuning into the fundamental interconnectedness that quantum physicists have now proven exists at reality's foundation. When Einstein discovered that particles remain mysteriously connected regardless of the distance separating them, he famously called it spooky action at a distance. But there's nothing spooky about it when you understand that consciousness itself operates through this same non-local field. Think about those profound spiritual experiences you've had. Maybe it was during meditation, or in nature, or in a moment of crisis when something shifted and you suddenly knew with absolute certainty that everything is connected. That knowing didn't come from your thinking mind. It came from your consciousness directly interfacing with the quantum field where all information exists simultaneously. The observer effect we discussed earlier reveals that consciousness collapses wave functions into specific realities. But here's what makes this revolutionary. Your mystical experiences have been showing you this process in real time. Every moment of prayer or focused intention that later manifested through seemingly impossible synchronicities was actually consciousness interacting with quantum superposition, the state where all possibilities exist simultaneously until observation collapses them into one specific outcome. When you set an intention and then witnessed a chain of coincidences that brought exactly what you needed, you weren't communicating with some external deity sitting on a cloud. You were consciousness itself, the same consciousness that permeates the entire quantum field, organizing probability waves into the most harmonious configuration. The field responded because you are the field, experiencing itself through the focal point of your individual awareness. This explains why surrender has always been central to authentic spiritual practice. When you release the need to control exactly how something manifests, you allow the field's inherent intelligence to select from infinite possibilities instead of limiting outcomes through fear-based observation patterns. Quantum mechanics shows us that forced observation, the kind driven by anxiety or desperate attachment, tends to collapse wave functions into less optimal configurations. But when you align your intention with genuine trust and then let go, you're allowing the quantum field to organize what physicists call constructive interference, where probability waves amplify each other to create outcomes that seem miraculous from a classical physics perspective, but are perfectly natural from a quantum viewpoint. That sense of divine presence you felt, the experience of being held by something infinitely vast and intelligent, is your accurate perception of the conscious nature of the quantum field itself. You're not separate from this presence. You're how it experiences itself, subjectively. The field is recognizing itself through your individual awareness, which is why these moments feel like coming home to something you've always known, but somehow forgotten. Direct knowing, those moments when information simply downloads into your consciousness without any logical process, demonstrates quantum non-locality in action. In the quantum realm, information doesn't travel through space. It exists omnipresently throughout the field. When you access intuitive knowledge, you're tapping into this non-local information network that consciousness navigates naturally. Consider how often your mystical experiences have involved transcending linear time, past, present, and future, seeming to collapse into an eternal now. Quantum mechanics reveals that time itself is observer-dependent. Different observers can experience the same events in different temporal sequences. Your consciousness, operating at quantum scales, naturally accesses this timeless perspective where causality works both forward and backward. Those moments of precognition or prophetic dreams weren't supernatural phenomena. They were consciousness, accessing information from probability waves that hadn't yet collapsed into manifest reality. The future you perceived existed in quantum superposition, and your awareness was sampling potential timelines before they crystallized into the classical reality we experience with our physical senses. Even healing experiences that seem to defy medical explanation align perfectly with quantum principles. The placebo effect, which mainstream medicine acknowledges but can't fully explain, is actually consciousness directly influencing matter at the quantum level. Your beliefs and expectations create specific observation patterns that collapse healing possibilities into manifestation. When you've experienced spontaneous healing, either in yourself or witnessed in others, you are seeing consciousness override genetic programming and physical limitation through quantum field effects. The body's cellular processes operate through quantum mechanical principles, which means consciousness can literally rewrite biological programming by changing the information patterns that organize matter. This is why ancient wisdom traditions always emphasized the power of belief and the importance of aligning with natural law rather than fighting against it. They understood intuitively what quantum physics has now proven mathematically. Consciousness and matter are not separate phenomena, but different aspects of one unified field. Your spiritual experiences weren't wishful thinking or psychological projection. They were accurate perceptions of how reality actually operates at its most fundamental level. Every moment of transcendence, every answered prayer, every synchronicity, every healing, every experience of divine love, all of it represents consciousness, recognizing its own nature through the quantum field that is its nature. The mystics weren't speaking metaphorically when they said, "as above, so below," or The kingdom of heaven is within you. They were describing the literal structure of reality that quantum mechanics has now mapped with mathematical precision. Your consciousness doesn't exist inside your brain. Your brain exists inside consciousness, which is the quantum field experiencing itself through infinite points of subjective awareness. This changes everything about how you approach spiritual practice. You're not trying to contact something external or transcend your human nature. You're learning to recognize what you already are, consciousness itself, playing in the quantum field of infinite possibility, creating reality through the very act of experiencing it. When you knelt in prayer as a child, you thought you were talking to something outside yourself. When you sat in meditation, you believed you were trying to quiet your mind. When you experienced that profound moment of unity consciousness, you probably called it a spiritual breakthrough. But here's what no religious teacher could tell you because they didn't have the language. You were learning to consciously interact with the quantum field itself. Every prayer you ever whispered was actually training in wave function collapse. Think about what happens when you pray with genuine intention. You focus your consciousness on a specific outcome. You feel it as already real. You align your entire being with that possibility. That's not superstition. That's applied quantum mechanics. You're literally selecting one potential reality from infinite quantum possibilities and collapsing it into manifestation through precisely focused awareness. The mystics who taught you to pray weren't asking you to beg external deities for favors. They were teaching you to recognize that consciousness itself is the fundamental force that shapes reality. When Jesus said, "Whatsoever you ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive," he was describing the observer effect in experiential language. Your believing consciousness doesn't hope for outcomes. It selects them from the quantum field of infinite potential. Consider how prayer actually works when it's effective. You don't just think about what you want. You feel into it. You align your entire energetic system with that reality. You become coherent with the outcome you're seeking. That coherence is what allows your consciousness to interface with quantum reality powerfully enough to collapse specific possibilities into experience. Every tradition that taught you to pray with your whole heart, mind, and soul was teaching you to achieve the consciousness coherence necessary for quantum field interaction. Meditation takes this training even deeper. When you learn to observe your thoughts without getting caught in them, you're learning to witness reality without unconsciously collapsing probability waves through fear-based patterns. Most people's consciousness is so fragmented by anxiety, desire, and mental chatter that they're constantly collapsing random possibilities into experience. Meditation trains you to become aware without interference, to observe without distorting what you're observing. The presence you cultivate in meditation isn't just peaceful awareness. It's quantum optimization of your consciousness system. When your mind becomes still and coherent, your consciousness can interface with the quantum field exponentially more powerfully than when it's scattered across 1,000 worries and desires. That's why every meditation tradition eventually leads practitioners to experiences of profound interconnectedness and reality-shifting insight. You're not transcending the physical world. You're learning to consciously participate in how it gets created moment by moment. Those unity consciousness teachings that seemed so mystical now reveal their quantum mechanical precision. When the Upanishads declared Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that, they were describing quantum entanglement between individual and universal consciousness. When Jesus taught, I and the Father are one, he was explaining that separate consciousness is an illusion created by limited perception. The quantum field doesn't recognize the boundaries your ego draws between self and other, inner and outer, observer and observed. The kingdom of heaven lies within wasn't poetic metaphor. It was quantum mechanics described before scientific language existed. The kingdom is the field of infinite potential that exists in the quantum vacuum, and accessing it requires turning attention inward to the consciousness that's fundamental to reality itself. Every mystic who pointed you toward inner exploration was directing you to the quantum level where possibilities become actualized through awareness. The dark nights of the soul that spiritual practitioners describe aren't random suffering. They're necessary dissolution of separation consciousness, so quantum nature can be recognized directly. When the ego's structure that maintains the illusion of separateness breaks down, what remains is the unified field awareness that mystics call enlightenment. Every tradition that spoke of dying to the false self before spiritual rebirth was describing the transition from Newtonian to quantum worldview, from believing you're a separate object in an external world to recognizing your localized universal consciousness. Surrender practices weren't teaching passive resignation. They were training you to allow the unified field's vast intelligence to organize outcomes rather than limiting manifestation through individual will. When you try to control reality from ego consciousness, you're working with a tiny fraction of available intelligence. When you align with the field's organizing principles through surrender, you're allowing infinite intelligence to coordinate circumstances in ways your individual mind never could conceive. Synchronicity recognition was learning to perceive the non-local organization of the quantum field in action. When your consciousness becomes coherent enough to detect the organizing patterns that connect all phenomena, they manifest in your experience as meaningful coincidence. Jung wasn't describing psychological projection when he mapped synchronicity. He was documenting how coherent consciousness perceives the holographic interconnectedness that quantum mechanics now proves underlies all apparent separateness. Every spiritual practice was quantum training delivered through experiential methods rather than mathematical theory. Contemplative prayer taught wave function collapse. Meditation developed coherent consciousness for quantum field interface. Unity teachings revealed the entangled nature of reality. Surrender practices aligned individual will with field intelligence. Presence cultivation optimized consciousness for quantum reality participation. The traditions couldn't explain the mechanics because they predated scientific language, but they could guide practitioners into direct experience of quantum reality operation. Science now explains what mystics always knew through lived practice. Consciousness isn't produced by matter. Matter is produced by consciousness interacting with the quantum field of infinite potential. This means every mystical experience you've had was accurate perception of how reality actually functions. Every spiritual practice you've engaged was education in conscious quantum reality participation. Every teaching that pointed you toward the fundamental unity underlying apparent separation was preparing you to recognize your true nature as localized universal consciousness. The complete picture emerges when science provides the mechanics while spirituality provides the lived practice. Together they reveal what both traditions have always been pointing toward. You're not a separate being having spiritual experiences in a material world. You're universal consciousness, learning to consciously participate in creating reality through quantum field interaction. You know how throughout history, mystics have described touching something beyond the physical world. That overwhelming sense of infinite potential, of consciousness that permeates everything, of being connected to some fundamental source that's simultaneously everything and nothing. Well, quantum physics has been quietly proving that every single one of those experiences was accurate, not metaphorical, not symbolic, literally accurate descriptions of reality's deepest structure. What we're looking at isn't coincidence. When you examine quantum mechanics alongside mystical descriptions of the monad, that ultimate divine principle described across every spiritual tradition, you find 7 properties that match so perfectly, it becomes impossible to deny we're dealing with the same phenomenon. The mystics weren't having religious experiences. They were having quantum experiences. Let's start with infinite potential. Quantum mechanics shows us that before observation, reality exists as infinite waves of probability and superposition. Every possible state, every potential outcome, every conceivable manifestation exists simultaneously as pure possibility. The electron isn't in one location. It's in all possible locations until consciousness observes it and collapses that infinite potential into specific reality. This isn't theoretical anymore. We've measured it. We've proven it. Now compare that to how mystics describe divine omnipotence, not as some external being flexing supernatural muscle, but as unlimited creative power existing as pure potential before manifestation. The Kabbalah calls it Ein Sof, the infinite that contains all possibilities. Hindu philosophy describes Brahman as Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, and infinite bliss potential. They're describing superposition. They're describing the quantum field in its natural state before wave function collapse. The second property is consciousness itself. The observer effect proves that consciousness directly affects physical reality. This isn't philosophy, it's measurable. Quantum mechanics. The very act of conscious observation determines which possibility becomes actual. Without consciousness, you don't get specific reality. You get infinite probability soup. This proves consciousness isn't something that emerged from matter. Consciousness is fundamental to reality's structure. Every mystical tradition has insisted on this. They call it cosmic consciousness, divine mind, universal awareness. The Upanishads state consciousness is Brahman. Buddhism teaches that mind is the forerunner of all phenomena. They weren't making spiritual poetry. They were describing how reality actually works at the quantum level. Consciousness doesn't come from brains. Brains are what consciousness looks like when it focuses through biological structures. Property 3 is omnipresence, and quantum entanglement proves this beyond doubt. When particles become entangled, they remain connected through the unified field, regardless of spatial distance. Change one, and the other changes instantaneously, not through signals traveling between them, but because they were never actually separate. The field that connects them is the same field that connects everything. Nothing exists outside this field because there is no outside. Mystics have always taught this. Divine omnipresence isn't about some being watching from everywhere. It's about recognizing that the fundamental fabric of reality is one continuous field, appearing as separate things. When you had that meditation experience where boundaries dissolved and you felt connected to everything, that wasn't a spiritual high. That was direct perception of quantum entanglement at macroscopic scales. The fourth property is timelessness. At the quantum level, time isn't fundamental. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously as possibilities until observation collapses them into temporal sequence. Quantum experiments have shown effects preceding their causes, particles existing in multiple time frames simultaneously, and information traveling backward through time. Linear time is what consciousness creates when it observes infinite temporal potential. This matches every description of divine eternity. Not endless time, but existence beyond time, while containing all time. When mystics describe touching the eternal now, experiencing all moments simultaneously, or sensing that everything that ever was or will be exists in this instant, they're describing quantum temporality. They're experiencing reality before consciousness collapses it into sequential time. Property 5 reveals creativity through conscious interaction. Wave function collapse demonstrates how specific realities manifest through consciousness interacting with infinite potential. It's not random, it's not predetermined. It's creative collaboration between awareness and possibility. This is identical to creation theologies, where divine will expresses infinite potential into specific form through conscious intention. Remember those meditation practices we discussed? Those weren't religious rituals. They were training you to consciously participate in wave function collapse. Every time you set clear intention and watched reality shift to match it, you were doing applied quantum mechanics. The sixth property is omniscience, demonstrated through quantum non-locality. Information doesn't travel through the field. Information is the field. Every point contains the whole. Change anything anywhere, and that information exists everywhere simultaneously. This isn't mystical speculation anymore. We've proven it in laboratory conditions. When mystics describe all-knowing divine awareness, they're not talking about some cosmic database. They're describing how information actually behaves in quantum reality. That intuitive knowing you sometimes access, where you suddenly understand something without learning it through normal channels. You're tapping into quantum non-locality. You're accessing information that exists everywhere in the field. The seventh property is the most profound. Simultaneous, everything, and nothing. The quantum vacuum is a field of infinite potential that's full of every possibility yet empty of any manifestation until observation occurs. It's pregnant with unlimited creative power while appearing completely empty. This perfectly matches mystical descriptions of divine void and plenum, the pregnant emptiness that contains everything while being nothing specific. When you've touched that space in deep meditation where there's infinite fullness and complete emptiness at the same time, you weren't having a mystical experience. You were directly perceiving the quantum vacuum. You were experiencing reality in its natural state before consciousness collapses it into specific manifestations. Here's what this means. Quantum physics hasn't discovered something new. It's rediscovered the monad that mystics have been describing for millennia, not as some separate divine being, but as the fundamental nature of reality itself. Every attribute ever ascribed to divinity, infinite potential, consciousness, omnipresence, timelessness, creativity, omniscience, and paradoxical fullness emptiness. These are measurable properties of the quantum field. This revelation transforms everything. You're not learning about some external divine field. You're recognizing yourself as a temporary expression of that field, experiencing itself through individual form. Your consciousness isn't separate from cosmic consciousness. It's cosmic consciousness focused through the lens of your particular nervous system. The monad isn't something you need to find or connect with. The monad is what you are, appearing to yourself as someone seeking it. The most profound shift happens when you stop believing in the monad as something separate from you and recognize yourself as its direct expression. This isn't a philosophical concept to contemplate, it's the fundamental reality of your existence becoming conscious of itself through your awareness. When Thoth spoke of the unified field, he wasn't describing something you could eventually access. He was revealing what you already are. The quantum field isn't your environment, it's your true nature expressing itself as the experience you call your life. 9 unmistakable signs mark this consciousness shift. First, the boundaries between yourself and others begin dissolving, not as a mystical experience, but as quantum entanglement, becoming your lived reality. You feel others' emotions not through empathy but through direct field connection. Their joy becomes your joy. Their pain becomes your pain, because the separation was always conceptual, never actual. Second, your intention practice transforms completely. Instead of requesting changes from an external universe, you recognize yourself as the field collapsing infinite possibilities into specific experiences. When you set an intention, you're not asking for something, you're selecting which probability wave to collapse from the quantum foam of potential. Third, synchronicity stops feeling coincidental and reveals itself as the constant confirmation of non-local organization, the book that appears exactly when you need it, the conversation that answers your unspoken question, the opportunity that manifests the moment you're ready. These aren't lucky breaks. They're the field's intelligence organizing optimal conditions for your recognition and growth. Fourth, direct knowing emerges without external intermediaries. Information arrives through non-local access rather than traditional learning. You suddenly understand concepts you've never studied, solve problems without conscious reasoning, or know things about people you've just met. The field's infinite information becomes directly accessible to your awareness. Fifth, natural compassion arises from recognized unity. When you truly understand that consciousness is one seamless whole appearing as many, harming others becomes as impossible as deliberately cutting your own hand. Compassion isn't something you practice, it becomes your spontaneous response to recognizing yourself in every being. Sixth, your fear of death decreases dramatically through recognition of the field's eternal nature. You realize that what you call death is simply one wave pattern dissolving back into the ocean of consciousness. The ocean itself, your true nature, never dies. Forms change, but the field expressing itself through those forms remains constant. Seventh, reality responds more immediately to your consciousness through the observer effect becoming your daily experience. Your thoughts and emotions don't just influence your internal state, they directly shape the quantum field around you. The universe becomes increasingly responsive because you're recognizing your role as its creative principle. Eighth, scientific and spiritual teachings appear complementary rather than contradictory. Quantum mechanics and ancient wisdom traditions describe the same reality from different angles. The mystical experiences reported by saints and sages match perfectly with the non-local, observer-dependent reality discovered by quantum physicists. Ninth, this very transmission found you at the perfect moment through field intelligence, organizing optimal recognition conditions. The fact that you're receiving this information now isn't random, it's the field's precise orchestration creating the exact circumstances for your awakening. These shifts bring 9 life-changing benefits that transform existence from struggle to exploration. Manifestation becomes consistent through conscious quantum interaction. You're no longer hoping the universe will respond to your desires, you're consciously participating in reality creation through field coherence. Death fear dissolves through eternal field recognition. When you truly understand yourself as the deathless consciousness expressing temporarily through form, the existential anxiety that drives most human suffering simply evaporates. Psychological suffering decreases dramatically through the end of separation illusion. Most emotional pain stems from believing you're isolated, competing, and vulnerable. Recognizing your unity with all existence eliminates the root cause of this suffering. Life purpose becomes crystal clear. You're the field exploring itself through your unique perspective. Every experience, every relationship, every challenge becomes an opportunity for consciousness to know itself. Reality responsiveness increases through coherent consciousness. As your awareness aligns with field principles, the physical world reflects your internal state more directly. This isn't magical thinking, it's quantum mechanics applied to daily life. Your worldview unifies through quantum spiritual integration. The artificial divide between science and spirituality collapses when you recognize both as descriptions of the unified field's behavior. Non-local information access enhances dramatically. Intuition, creativity, and insight become reliable sources of knowledge because you're tapping directly into the field's infinite intelligence. Most importantly, life transforms from struggle to exploration. When you recognize yourself as the eternal field experiencing itself through temporary form, every moment becomes fascinating rather than threatening. Your individual recognition creates ripples through the entire field because consciousness is one seamless whole appearing as many. Through morphic resonance applied to consciousness evolution, your awakening creates patterns that make recognition easier for others. Each person who realizes their true nature as the unified field strengthens this pattern for everyone. This isn't just personal development, it's humanity's survival strategy. Every existential threat we face emerges from separation thinking. Climate change, nuclear weapons, social inequality, environmental destruction all stem from the illusion that we're separate beings competing for limited resources rather than one consciousness exploring itself through infinite expressions. The daily practice is elegantly simple. 5 times throughout each day, pause completely. Recognize yourself as the unified field experiencing itself through your temporary form. Feel this recognition in your body, not just your mind. Observe your experience from field awareness rather than personal identity. During these pauses, you're not trying to become something different, you're remembering what you've always been. The field doesn't need improvement, it needs recognition. Your consciousness doesn't require development. It requires acknowledgement of its true nature. The ultimate truth, Thoth preserved through millennia of transmission, is this: consciousness isn't something in the universe. Consciousness is what the universe fundamentally is. You're not a being having conscious experiences. Your consciousness itself having the experience of being human. The unified field isn't experiencing itself through you, the unified field is experiencing itself as you. Every thought, every emotion, every sensation is the monad, knowing itself through your particular perspective within its infinite self-exploration. This recognition doesn't separate you from ordinary life, it reveals ordinary life as the extraordinary play of cosmic consciousness. Washing dishes becomes the field exploring texture and temperature. Conversations become consciousness communing with itself. Even challenges and difficulties become the field's method of deepening self-knowledge through contrast and resolution. You are not seeking the monad, you are the monad seeking itself through the magnificent adventure of human existence. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."